What's up, civics class? Today we're going to talk about enlightenment, or blinding me with science, which is your 80s throwback song reference of the day. Hold on tight, we're going to blast through this in about 5 minutes or less. Enlightenment. Sir Isaac Newton, big fan of gravity. You guys remember the idea that if you drop a marker, it's going to fall down to the ground? That's called gravity. It's also called wasting ink. But moving along, there were people who started to wonder whether tradition, religion, authority, and superstition were the way to run a government. They're like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. This law of gravity thing, it works for everybody. Even if you're the king, even if you're a poor, broke farmer with no money, if you drop the marker, it's going to fall on the ground. That's not religion, that's not tradition, it's not authority. That's just a simple natural law. So let's talk a little bit about these natural laws and this whole Enlightenment idea. All right, time period. We just hit this. What's it called when people started criticizing tradition and looking towards science? It's called the Enlightenment. Ding ding! You, sir or ma'am, are a genius. John Locke. He believes we were all born like a blank sheet of paper. Doesn't matter whether you were poor, rich, whether you were a farmer, a king, a peasant, a slave, a ruler. He says it's what happens to you that shapes who you become. He started to say, look, guys, this is not fair. That just because you claim God gave you power, you don't have any proof of that. This whole divine right, meaning you have the right to do what you want because God said, we need some proof of that. You can't just go around throwing the idea out there that God told you to do something. Can you prove it? So that didn't make him real popular with the church or the king. But he came up with this idea that we have a social contract, which means that if people obey the ruler will take care of their individual rights. But if people don't respect the ruler, the king doesn't treat them correctly. If the king doesn't treat the people correctly and take care of their individual rights, the people have the right to overthrow the king. So if one side violates that contract, the other side has some ways to get around it. All right, these are the natural laws he believed. He believes society should just kind of go on what makes sense. Is it logical? If it's logical, let's follow it. So the natural laws guarantee us a couple things: life, liberty, and property. Those should sound familiar. Thomas Jefferson, when he helped write the Constitution, borrowed those, but he changed it around a little bit. He changed it to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because if you were a slave back then, you didn't have a right to property. If you were not a white male, you didn't have a right to property. So when they wrote the Constitution, they didn't want to change that around. So they changed it to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But you can see that Locke's beliefs about natural law were a big influence on the Constitution. All right, again, he believed if you don't take care of people, they're not going to take care of you. They've got a right to kick your little tail out of office. Dope! All right, who believed in natural rights? John Locke. Moving along, natural rights, life, liberty, and property. Or if you're Thomas Jefferson and you rip the idea off, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Baron de Montesquieu, Montesquieu, French guy. He believed we should divide the government into 3 different parts: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Sounds like a lot of branches, so let's break this little tree up here. All right, your legislative branch, it's led by Congress. Congress is the House and the Senate. They make the laws. The executive branch, led by the president. He's in charge of enforcing the law, making sure people follow it. And the judicial branch, they're led by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is in charge of deciding or interpreting whether a law is fair or legal. They have a way of putting checks or stops on all the other branches. That keeps one branch from being too powerful. Separation of powers keeps one branch from just dominating the way everything runs. It took some power from the king, in our case the president, and spread it around to all the other branches. All right, 3 branches. Legislative makes the law, executive enforces the law, judicial interprets the law. You with me? I know you are. You got this. Montesquieu. Montesquieu believed in separation of powers. Which branch makes the laws? You know this. The legislative branch. It's made up of Congress, which is the House and Senate. And folks, that's almost all we got. You just need to know the president is in charge of the executive branch. He enforces the law. Supreme Court interprets the law. They check each other. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Enlightenment. You got this. You're bright. Lights out. That's all she wrote.